Last spring, a student I was working with called me in a panic. The school she had committed to, deposit paid, lease signed, had just dropped 9 spots in the US News rankings, and she wanted to let me know if she'd made a mistake. She hadn't. Nothing about the school had changed. Same faculty, same clinics, same career office, but a formula had recalculated, and that formula was about to cost her months of sleep over nothing. And tomorrow morning, that formula updates again. US News is releasing this year's law school rankings. By tomorrow afternoon, thousands of people will rearrange their futures because of this list. A school ranked number 14 will feel like a better school than one ranked number 16. Even though nobody, not the applicants, not the parents, not the admissions deans, can tell you what a 2-spot difference actually means. Now, I've been in this world over 20 years, and I need you to see how this machine works before you let it make your decision for you. Now, here is the story most people believe. US News collects data on law schools, unemployment rates, bar passage rates, LSAT scores, faculty resources, then they crunch the numbers. They rank every school from top to bottom. The list is not perfect, but it's the closest thing to an objective measure that exists. And that story has held for a long time. Since 1987, US News has been the default. Deans planned around it, employers use it as a hiring shortcut, students build their entire application list around it. For years, about 14 schools sat at the top and nobody moved. The top 14. That consistency made the whole system feel solid. Like the rankings were measuring something real about the schools, something permanent. But that consistency is not proof the rankings are accurate, it's proof that they are self-reinforcing. A law professor I saw online nailed it. He said, "When my school goes up, the rankings are right. When it goes down, the rankings are wrong. Simple logic." And of course he was joking, but he described the system perfectly. Rankings tell students where to go. Students go there. Their outcomes confirm the ranking and the loop keeps spinning. But in late 2022, the loop cracked open. Yale pulled out of the rankings, then Harvard followed, then Stanford, Columbia, Georgetown. 12 of the top 14 law schools said they were done submitting data to US News. They said it was about values, that public interest work wasn't getting credit, financial aid was getting penalized. And some of that was real. But the boycott was also about control. These schools had been on top for decades, so they didn't need the list anymore. They didn't love some outside formula telling the world how to sort them. Of course, US News did not stop. They just changed the formula. They switched to publicly available data, ABA 509 disclosures, and things schools have to publish by law. Sounds reasonable, until you realize that schools have been gaming that data for years, and some of them got caught doing a lot worse than gaming it. For example, Villanova submitted false data to US News. Totally false. They fabricated LSAT scores and GPAs for years. Illinois did the same thing and both schools admitted it. 2 law professors at Emory wrote a paper about this. The title was "Law Deans in Jail." Their argument was that the data manipulation at some schools could meet the legal definition of fraud. And that is the part that got exposed. The everyday gaming is quieter and way more common. Take, for example, employment numbers. US News puts heavy weight on how many graduates have jobs, and that should matter. But the way schools report employment is a mess. The ABA splits jobs into categories. Now, the one that actually means something is full-time, long-term bar passage required. That is a real legal job. But the overall employment rate, the number on the brochure, the number that parents see, counts everything, including temp work and part-time gigs. A graduate delivering food counts as employed. Now, some schools did not stop at letting the broad number do the work. They created jobs for their own graduates, like temporary positions at the school, timed so those graduates would count as employed right when the reporting deadline hit. One lawsuit accused schools of paying students to delay taking the bar exam. And think about why here. If a graduate fails the bar, it drags the school's passage rate down. But if they haven't taken it yet, they don't exist in the data. They are invisible. So this is what US News is building its rankings from. Public data? Yes. Audited data? No. They take what they get. Now here's a move that's even more clever. It's called yield protection. Let's say a school gets an application from someone with a strong LSAT score. It's a great candidate. But the school figures this person's probably going to get into a higher ranked school and go there, and so they preemptively reject them or waitlist them because they are overqualified. If the school admits them and they choose to go somewhere else, the school's yield rate drops. Lower yield hurts selectivity. So the school never lets them into protected number. Now, I've talked to students this has happened to. They had no idea. They thought they weren't good enough, but they were actually too good. The school just didn't want the hit to their stats. Now, there is another version of this. Some schools route lower scoring applicants into part-time programs. It's the same school with the same professors. They get the same degree. They take the same bar exam at the end. But for a long time, part-time LSAT scores didn't count in the rankings formula. The part-time track became a place to stash numbers that would drag the median down. Now, a professor named Theodore Cito pushed US News to count both full-time and part-time scores, and some deans pushed back. One said publicly the school would rather shut down their evening programs entirely than let those scores into the formula. So a law school would rather cut off access for working students, people with jobs, people with kids, people who can only go to class at night, rather than drop a few spots on a magazine list. Now, that's what I call the rankings trap. The rankings become the point rather than the education, the outcomes. It's all about the number. Schools optimize for the number. Students sort themselves by it. Employers use it as a shortcut. And the whole system starts orbiting a formula instead of the thing the formula was supposed to measure. Another professor described it this way. The rankings become a self-fulfilling prophecy because students use them to sort themselves into schools. Entry-level faculty do the same thing. The list doesn't just reflect the hierarchy, it builds it. And the version of this list coming out tomorrow has a new problem. US News says the methodology uses the same weights as last year. But they also say there are, and this is their words, quote, granular changes to how data was collected, reviewed, and computed. Now, nobody outside the company knows what those changes are until the list drops tomorrow. Now, Derek Muller, a law professor at Notre Dame, spends months trying to project the rankings using public ABA data. He can reconstruct about 75% of the formula. The other 25%, including how the employment calculation actually works, is not disclosed. And so the best outside projection in the country is still a guess. The real formula is locked inside a media company. And think about what that media company needs. US News sells subscriptions. Now, a stable list where nothing moves is not going to drive traffic. But a list where a top school drops 5 spots, that is a headline. That's clicks, that's money. Now, I'm not accusing them of rigging results. I'm pointing out what's right in front of you here. The formula is partially hidden. The data is not audited. The company profits from surprises. And this is the system that you're supposed to trust with a $200,000 decision about your life. Now, after everything I just walked you through, here is what tomorrow's list actually is. It is not a quality ranking. It is a performance score inside a formula. The schools at the top aren't necessarily the best schools. They're the ones that scored highest on a test designed by a magazine. Now, once you see that, you can't unsee it. And once you can't unsee it, the question changes. Instead of asking, what is the highest ranked school I can get into? Instead, you start asking, what school is actually going to place me in the career I want? And that is a completely different question with a completely different answer. The answer is in the job placement data, not the rankings. Every American Bar Association accredited school publishes employment summaries. Most schools post even more detailed breakdowns on their own websites. where graduates end up, which firms and agencies hire from that school, what the salary ranges look like in different markets. And that data is free, it's public, and almost nobody looks at it because the rankings give people a shortcut they think they can trust. Now, over 20 years, the students I've seen make the best law school decisions are the ones who skipped the shortcut. They called career services offices. They asked the hard questions. They looked at where last year's class actually ended up. Not the overall employment rate, but the bar required placement rate. They compared debt to realistic starting salaries in the city where they actually want to live. Because a law degree is way more portable regionally than nationally. A school ranked 40th that owns the hiring market in your target city can be a smarter move than a school ranked 15th in a city you have no plans to live in. Now, of course, none of that fits on a magazine's numbered list. All of it matters more to your actual career than whether US News put your school at 22 or 28. Now, tomorrow morning, US News will tell you which law school is number one in their view. And thousands of people are going to believe them. They're going to sort their futures around a list built by people who've never practiced law, scored by a formula they won't fully show you, fed by data that schools have been caught faking. A school ranked 14th is going to feel like a better school than one ranked 16th, and nobody's going to be able to tell you why. Now, regardless of how the rankings shape up, your ability to get into the best law school possible for you, to get more scholarship money, to have more options, to have more scholarship negotiation leverage, it all comes down to your LSAT score. Your GPA is probably pretty fixed at this point in time. If you're late in undergrad, if you've already graduated, you can't redo undergrad, not easily anyway. But your LSAT score is a single day, 2.5 hours, and it weighs more heavily than all of undergrad combined. And so if you want my help getting the highest LSAT score possible, I'm happy to help you out. I'm offering free LSAT tutoring for everybody watching this now or later. The link to book that free tutoring lesson with me personally is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below this video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. That is an open offer for everyone, by the way. And for those of you just joining, I'm offering these free lives every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you're watching this. Feel free to drop some questions in the chat, and I'll get to as many of those as I can. I see Asana2 saying, I just bought your LSAT Unplugged with bonuses. I'm using your textbook as the foundation to everything. I'm taking the LSAT in June. Awesome. Glad you got the book. Glad you got the bonuses. Happy to help you out with your June LSAT prep. Feel free to book the free tutoring with me. We could talk through your action plan more. And for those wondering, what we do during those free tutoring lessons is we look at where you're currently at, what your LSAT goal score is, what your time frame is, and we match you to the best plan for you to get you to your goal by your target test date. Of course, for those taking the LSAT in just 1 week, not a whole lot we can do at this late stage for you. I would focus more in the final week on just taking full practice tests, reviewing them in depth. But if you've got 2 months till June, 4 months till August, plenty of time to improve your LSAT score significantly, to improve your odds significantly. If you're taking it on a tighter time frame like June, for example, I would take a more intensive boot camp style approach. But if you're taking the LSAT in August or beyond, we can take more of a slow and steady approach. I see a question asking, what do I do if I don't want to be a lawyer? Well, if you don't want to be a lawyer, no reason to take the LSAT, right? I mean, I'm glad to have you here, of course, but I'd be thinking about what can you do instead. So rather than defining by negation what you don't want to do, is there something else that you do want to do? Now, of course, I'm not really a career counselor. The LSAT is my area of specialization. I would talk to your career services office at your undergrad. Even if you've graduated, they'll still be able to help you out, and you could talk through what you want to do with your career instead. Of course, lots of great things you can do, but right here we're focused on, of course, the LSAT, getting into law school and so on. I see GA's asking, my sister has a 3.9 GPA and a 170 LSAT. Does she have a chance at Yale Law School? So yes, she has a chance. Her GPA is right on point for Yale's GPA medians. For those who aren't aware, the top 14 law schools all have GPA medians of roughly 3.9 or so. Their LSAT medians range from 170 to 174. I think Yale's median for the LSAT is around a 174, so your sister's LSAT is a bit below that. The GPA is on point, though. Yes, she has a chance. It's not crazy to apply, but she'll have a much better chance if she retakes the LSAT and can score 175 plus or so. And feel free to send her my way. You can forward her the link to my TikTok or forward her the link to book the free tutoring with me. The link is in my bio, by the way. Happy to help her out for an LSAT retake plan. And no, where you went to undergrad doesn't really matter. You can go to any undergrad and go to a top law school. BB's asking, do you think if I get a 141 on the LSAT, but my GPA is a 3.3 and I had strong letters of rec, can I get into law school? Frankly, the 141 LSAT is subpar, below medians. 3.3 GPA is also subpar as well. Strong letters of rec are not going to carry you, and I would retake the LSAT. I would strongly recommend retaking the LSAT because the GPA and LSAT are both low. Can't easily redo undergrad, of course, but you can retake the LSAT in 2 months. The LSAT's offered in June. It's offered in August. Plenty of chances to retake it and apply when apps open in the fall. Sleep is asking, I have a 2.9 GPA, and I'm getting an LSAT range of 177 to 179 on my prep tests. Any advice on applications? So GPA is below medians, of course. LSAT practice test scores are outstanding. Of course, practice and actual are two different things. Before we talk applications, let's lock in that LSAT score officially. Take the LSAT officially as soon as you can and get that LSAT score from being theoretical in practice to being actual and locked in on your score report. Secure it so that you've got it in the bag, because that's the number one thing you could do to improve your odds. And then also consider that students often drop at least 5 to 8 points from their practice test to the actual. So you want to have a buffer in place. Make sure that you're scoring on the higher end and make sure that you're simulating test day properly, considering pacing and time management and endurance. You're not taking breaks to go to the bathroom or check your phone. You're taking those practice tests under strict test day conditions. Feel free to book the free tutoring lesson with me. We could talk through how to get that practice test to turn into your official LSAT for real. Grayson's asking, I had a 163 LSAT. Should I retake? My GPA is low. I mean, generally speaking, I'm going to recommend retaking the LSAT because if you do better, great. If not, no big deal. Law schools do not average multiple LSAT scores. They only take the highest score on your record, and no, Brendan, does not look bad to take the LSAT multiple times. And think about it this way. Law schools have no incentive to care how many times you took the LSAT because they are not evaluated based on that metric. All they've got to do is report the highest score to the American Bar Association. And so while they can see every score on your record, they are not averaging multiple scores. So if you got, say, a 175, retook it and got a 173, the 175 is what counts. If you got a 175 followed by a 177, the 177 is what counts. And so why not give yourself more at-bats? Part of the reason for all the LSAT score inflation we're seeing these days is because it has become easier to retake the LSAT, given that it's gone from being offered only 4 times a year to being offered 8 times a year. And so with more opportunities to retake, more people do retake. And as a result, given that only highest scores are considered, the score medians keep rising. Madison's asking, is the argumentative writing scored? Do schools look at it? So currently the argumentative writing, the writing sample is not scored. So it's not nearly as important as the scored portions of the LSAT. I wouldn't spend any time studying the writing sample until you've actually locked in your official LSAT score. Schools can and do look at it sometimes, but it doesn't carry the same weight as the scored multiple choice. So again, I wouldn't give it nearly as much attention. Of course, give it your full effort. Maybe do a practice one after the official LSAT, but don't spend too much time thinking about it. And if you want to go to law school right after undergrad, answering Brendan's question here, I would suggest you take the LSAT over the summer before your senior year at the latest, so you can apply as soon as applications open. If you apply first thing when applications open, it's easier to get in and there's more scholarship money available. So for those of you entering senior year right now who want to go straight from undergrad into law school, I would say maybe take the June LSAT as your first take, the August LSAT as your second take as a backup. August LSAT scores come back at the end of August, and you could send in your applications first thing when they open in September. Thanks for all the great questions, folks. Keep them coming. I'm just scanning through here for more that I missed. Sleep is asking, advice for personal statements. Greetings from Detroit. Hey, Sleep. So for personal statements, again, I wouldn't spend time on them until you've taken the LSAT, locked in your score. The LSAT's way more important than application essays are. But let's say you've already locked in your LSAT, or you want to do a little bit of application essay studying or prep on the side, working on your writing, working on your drafts. Consider that you want your final draft to be roughly 2 pages double-spaced. I would recommend that you write an initial version. If the final is going to be 500 words, your rough draft should be roughly 1,500 words, 3 times the length. Make it stream of consciousness, free writing, whatever comes to mind, just write it down, then ruthlessly edit later. Don't edit while you write, edit after you write. And please don't laundry list your resume. You want to tell one story, tell it well, tell it deeply. Don't tell, instead show. You want to share colorful examples and anecdotes, stories that make your writing come to life. Don't make it dry. Don't make it general or vague or unspecific. You want to be hyper specific with details and supporting examples to share your story, to help them picture your life, get them to like you, get them to want to push for you. Especially if your numbers are below the medians, you want to get that extra push from getting them to like you, and that comes from telling a good story. But share one specific detail, one story, make it come to life. So if you have several different line items on your resume, like internships, volunteer work, work experience, pick one story from one of those areas and go deep on it. But again, not nearly as important as the LSAT or the GPA. This is not like undergrad admissions. And so to Brendan's question, do extracurriculars matter? Not really. If you have them, of course, talk about them. But I'd rather you have 2 more points on the LSAT than another extracurricular on your resume. Student Amita is asking, will you recommend taking the LSAT after I finish a lawsuit against my previous college? Oh, okay, here. So I'm gathering that you've sued your previous college. You're in the middle of a lawsuit with them, and then you are going to take the LSAT. Well, I probably wouldn't talk about the lawsuit on your application because you don't want your future law school to worry that you're going to have a lawsuit against them also, right? Law schools are risk averse, as is any big bureaucracy or institution, right? So I would not talk about it in your application. Sometimes folks who have lawsuits or have been involved in lawsuits want to talk about them in their applications, but law schools are scared of getting sued too. And so I wouldn't highlight that detail. You can take the LSAT whenever you're ready. It's a separate question, right? You can take the LSAT whenever you're scoring at or above your goal score. If you're busy with the lawsuit and can't study for the LSAT simultaneously, understood, of course. But I would take the LSAT whenever you can get a top score. That could be now, that could be later. Your LSAT score is good for 5 years. So take it whenever you're ready and you think that you can achieve your fullest potential. Soul's asking, does scoring in the top 10% at a low tier ranked school provide job outcomes? Maybe. I mean, better to be at the top of the class than the bottom of the class, but some low ranked law schools don't have good employment outcomes for a lot of their students. So it really depends on the school, but you can look up the stats for any given ABA accredited law school in those 509 reports. They'll share with you what percentage of their graduates had jobs requiring a JD 9 months after graduation. They'll also share bar passage rates, and so you can see a lot of the details in those reports. Grayson's asking, I had a 163 LSAT, should I retake my GPA is low? Yeah, if your GPA is low, retake the LSAT. As simple as that. I mean, you offset a lower GPA with a higher LSAT. And with a 163, there's still plenty of room to go up significantly. As for which LSAT score specifically you would need, Depends on your goals, depends on what law school you want to go to. And so by however much your GPA is below the median, you want your LSAT score to be relatively higher above the median to compensate. So let's say your GPA is at the school's 25th percentile. You then want your LSAT to be at least at the 75th percentile just to compensate to balance it out. But then if you want to have strong numbers relative to the school to get more scholarship money, you want your LSAT even that much higher above the 75th percentile to compensate. Allison's asking, thoughts on a gap year before law school? Yeah, it could be a great idea. Depends what you do with it, right? So if you want that time to study for the LSAT, to get some work experience, save up some money, decide whether law school is really right for you, by all means, go do it. The question is, what are you going to do that's productive with that time during the gap year? Studying for the LSAT is a no-brainer. Definitely do that during that time if you haven't locked in the LSAT already. Maybe saving up some money for law school as well. That could certainly help too. Never hurts to build up your savings, especially since you might be taking on some debt for law school. You want to minimize that. So yeah, I would say gap years are a good idea if you can use them wisely. And of course, if you have someone supporting you during that time, you don't want to be financially stressed in between undergrad and law school. Avernus is asking, what is a good undergraduate GPA? So good is relative. Good is relative to the law school that you want to target. For the top 14 law schools, their GPA medians are all around a 3.9. And so good for a T14 would be a 4.0. For a lower ranked school, a 3.7 might be good. It all depends. But keep in mind that GPA inflation is more than you would think. Even a top 50 law school still has a pretty high undergraduate GPA median. And so the GPA requirements for law school might be higher than you would have thought. You can look up the stats directly in the American Bar Association 509 reports. Just Google Yale Law 509 or Harvard Law 509, and you'll see what you need. A coach is asking, I'm applying for fall 2026, which is late, but would you still recommend the June LSAT? I'm taking it in April. So the April LSAT is late for this cycle. The June LSAT is also late for this cycle. If you want to start law school in roughly 4 to 5 months from now, speaking in early April. But there are some law schools that will take the results of the April LSAT. Some will even take the results of the June LSAT. You just got to ask the school specifically and see if you are past their deadlines or not. It's going to vary. Emerson's asking, what major would you recommend to prepare well for law in the LSAT, but also allow for a reliable career outside of law? So you can major in literally anything and go to law school. Doesn't matter what you major in. You can major in poli-sci, you can major in criminal justice. Those are pretty common pre-law majors, of course. But if you want a major that both prepares you for the LSAT in law school and also has a reliable career if you didn't go to law school, actually, I would think that maybe comp sci could be a good major, because surprisingly, comp sci majors do well on the LSAT, and they also are, of course, employable outside of law as well. So you're hedging your bets. You've got good options whether you go to law school or not. Of course, not saying to major in comp sci for that reason alone, but something worth considering. I see Avernus is asking about philosophy. So philosophy majors also do well on the LSAT, but Emerson was asking, are they also allowing for a reliable career outside of law? I don't know if a philosophy major is very employable. With simply a BA in philosophy, I'm not sure if that gets you a great job, in generally speaking. So that's why I'm saying comp sci instead. But I do think it's prudent to ask, well, what is a good major that would also be good for law school and other career options as well, aside from law? But if you're certain law schools what you want to do, I would both look for a major that tends to do well on the LSAT and also tends to get a high GPA, because law school admissions is primarily GPA driven. Iwatata is saying, so major in art, got it. Yeah, really, right? Kofi's asking, is the LSAT going to grade the writing section? They will grade the writing sample eventually, but not yet. LSAC has announced on their website that they do plan to grade the writing sample at some point in the near future. They even added a field to the score report called the writing ability score. It's currently blank, of course. And if they were going to start grading it this year, they would have announced that by now. So my guess is probably next year. And so if you want to knock out the LSAT before they grade the writing sample, I would go for knocking it out by April or June of next year, because my guess is that starting after June of 2027, that's when they'll start grading it, because they typically start any major changes to the LSAT starting after June of a given year. So LSAT calendar years run from July to June of the following year. So given that they start the new LSAT testing year in July/August, I would guess that August is probably the first LSAT administration that will have a scored writing sample, August of 2027, that is. Iverness is asking, I have a 3.8 GPA at a top 25. Can I realistically get into a good law school with a mid LSAT? So you're saying you have a 3.8 GPA from a top 25 undergraduate college, and you want to get into a good law school with a mid LSAT? I mean, how do we define mid LSAT? I mean, a 3.8 GPA is great, of course. It'd probably be at around the medians for a lot of top 50 law schools. But what LSAT do you need? I'd say you want to have a 165, 170 ideally, at least, for the best outcomes. B's asking how bad is a 152? 152 is right around the median LSAT score of everybody who takes the LSAT. Not everyone who goes to law school, of course. Those who end up going to law school have higher LSAT scores than those who just took the LSAT. So 152 is a good starting point. I actually started off with a 152 diagnostic myself. I ended up with a 175. Took me an entire year, though, and at least half of that was a complete waste of time. If I had done it properly, I could have knocked it out in just a couple of months, though, because the LSAT is all about pattern recognition. If you can spot the tricks and traps, you can avoid them. It all comes down to understanding how the test makers think and seeing it from their perspective. And once you do that, everything changes. And so if you're at that 152, looking for that 170 plus, I'm happy to help you out. For anyone who hasn't heard, I'm offering free LSAT tutoring for everybody watching this now or later. The link to book that free tutoring lesson with me is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. That is an open offer for everybody watching this now and later, by the way. And I do these free lives every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you're watching this. Aside from these daily live streams with open Q&A, anything else and admissions, I'm also adding in for a while additional daily live streams covering actual LSAT reading comprehension passages from the previously administered LSAT practice tests. If you go to the live tab on the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel, you can watch all of my previous lives, both the Q&As and the reading comp explanations. So I'm adding in some additional live streams for the foreseeable future. I'm covering every single real official LSAT practice test reading comp passage, all 400 or so of them. And so tune in for those as well for additional bonus live streams. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. I'll see you all then.